In today's episode, I meet Jo Sellick. Jo formed the Sellick Partnership over 20 years ago and last year sold his equity to French firm Samsic. During our discussion, we discussed what motivated him to sell, what the structure of the transaction was, and what life's been like post-sale.
Matt, thanks for the invitation. Really pleased to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too.
Thank you.
So, Jo, 2002, you formed Sellick Partnership, which was and still is a Manchester-based professional services recruitment business.
Correct.
And you exited the start of 2024?
Yeah, came out January 2024.
Okay. So to give the listeners some sort of context, what sort of size was Sellick in sort of 2023, 24 on your exit?
Yeah, so we'd head office in Manchester. When I came out, turnover around about 110, 150 mil, something on those lines. The business model was mainly temporary, interim and contract, 75%, 25% perm, 75% interim, temporary and contract. A lot of frameworks, public sector. When I came out, I think we were paying maybe 1,600 people on a Friday. Limited companies, umbrellas, that kind of
temporary workers,
temporary workers, PAY, yeah. So yeah, we were a fairly sizable business. Offices, obviously Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle, Derby. 125 employees, and I loved it. I think recruitment is a great industry. It doesn't get talked about as much as it should. 22 years building it from scratch, scaling it and selling it. It was fab. Went on a great journey. Had some more ups than downs. I'm sure we'll go into those in a minute. But yeah, recruitment is a great industry. As I said, it doesn't get talked about enough. It's 43 billion for the UK economy each year. It's enormous, and it just doesn't get the the value that it deserves.
Yeah, I think. Do you think that's a sector by sector type thing? Do you think there's some sectors that really value recruitment, others that perhaps don't?
Yeah, I think last time I looked, I think it's circa 27,000 agencies in the UK, which is enormous. I think 85% of those are under 10 heads. So the weakness for me is that the strength of it, you can set up, Sellick Partnership, Sellick Associates, whatever you want to call it, Matt Associates, within 2 or 3 hours. There's no entry level. So you can put some ads on the job board, and you'll have candidates, and you can sell those candidates to whoever. So that's the real weakness of it. That there's at Sellick we tried really hard to differentiate ourselves because there's so much competition. So we'd talk about the culture all the time and what we're doing as a business all the time and that side of it. So it's super competitive.
And that differentiator, if you bring you to the end, so to speak, those differentiators obviously got you an exit, barely 15 months ago now. So can you talk to us a little bit about the structure of what that looked like? What did the deal look like? Some of the mechanics of it, so that our listeners can understand when you get a business of 100 plus million turnover, 1,600 temporary workers being paid on a weekly basis. Yeah. What does that deal structure look like for the person exiting?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So ideally, you need myself and my two colleagues who drove the business from the outset, Hannah and Ray. The great thing about the three of us, we worked really well together throughout our careers at Sellick. Number two, when we'd made a conscious decision to go to market, we were aligned. So the three of us thought it was a good opportunity to sell the business or look for a potential buyer.
And what was that driver, Jo? What was the driver? What made you sitting in a room one day and the three of you like, right, we want to sell? Somebody approached you. What was the kind of
so I suppose that driver was, so we'd been through the 2008-2010 financial crash. We got through that. Which was it was a troubling experience for the business. We had to close some offices. We had to make people some redundant, particularly Belfast, which was a real a USP for us. There weren't many agencies in Belfast, and we did really well up until the crash. And the reason that Belfast was affected so badly was the banks stopped lending to the property companies. Okay. So it was like a tap. Overnight, it was switched off. So we burnt a bit of cash trying to keep Belfast open. but unfortunately we had to close it. So we come through that, we lick our wounds, we start to rebuild the balance sheet. And I think maybe around sort of 2016, 2017, the three of us, and the economy was beginning to come back, balance sheet had been repaired. And we thought, by that stage, we'd been working in the business 15, 16 years, and we felt, what, we should maybe realise maybe what some of the value might be worth in the company. So we made some approaches to around the market and who we should approach. So we approached an organisation in Mayfair called Boxington. So they were a firm that specialised in selling recruitment businesses.
Okay.
So we did some due diligence around them. And we got on board with them, and we found the relationship very good. They then went to the market on our behalf and looked for businesses that we felt might be suitable to buy us. So they put 2 or 3 organisations on the table, and it was a bit like, I described this a bit like dating. You go and meet these individuals you want to buy, and some you like, some you don't like, and all that side of it. So we enjoyed the process. It became sometimes I don't want to use the word tedious, but you go into a lot of meetings, the same meeting.
Competitive, I guess.
Competitive,
yeah.
a little bit competitive.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say tedious. Repetitive.
Yeah.
But so we got to the point. The really interesting bit though is we got to a point where we turned down 2 offers for one reason or another. And the great thing about turning down an offer is you realise what you don't want.
Okay.
So that gave us some real confidence to think, what, if people do want us, maybe the price wasn't right or their leadership team wasn't right. We were really, really keen that if someone bought us, ideally it wouldn't be someone that would close our offices, because we had smaller offices or bigger offices than maybe another business that had the same locations as us. So we were thinking about the employees all the way along. So ideally we didn't want a UK buyer. Ideally wanted maybe someone from Europe or from the States or from Asia. So then we took ourselves off the market for maybe 6 months just to because those offers weren't right, and the business was doing really, 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 really well still. Stuck with it, and then out of the blue, these guys in Mayfair gave us a call and introduced a business who was called Samsic, who I hadn't heard of at the time. So Samsic are a French business out of Rennes in Brittany. We had a first meeting with them in Boxington's office in Mayfair with my soon-to-be boss called Gilles and his colleague Tongi.
First impressions of Gilles?
Yeah,
can you say?
No, Gilles and I had a great relationship.
Okay, good.
Yeah. First impression was really good. So then fast forward 6 or 7 meetings, 2 or 3 in France, in Rennes, 2 or 3 in Manchester, but on from the original meeting in London. And then, so we were getting close to doing a deal. And having visited their head office in Rennes, in Brittany, they're sportastic, about a bit like me and you, Matt. Love of sport, football, cricket, anything. I picked up this in their offices, and one of the guys, he collected football shirts from around the world, because Samsic at the time was sponsoring Rennes.
Okay.
So they were their main sponsors. So we get to a final meeting in Manchester. And as you know, I'm a United fan.
Yep.
So I phone up Old Trafford to see if we can do the deal in one of the rooms, the corporate rooms,
the suites above the
suites
overlooking
the ground.
Yeah.
So of course, United were a nightmare. We can't do it. Weren't flexible, anything like that. So I thought I need to change tack here. So I phoned your team up. So I phoned City up, and they were brill. So we ended up meeting on a February day at City's ground in a box, looking over the halfway line. These French guys loved it. So after about 4 or 5 hours of intensive negotiations and all that side of it, and we got the whiteboards out and the calculators, and we were kind of, before then we were thereabouts, but we shook on a number and a deal on that February day. And we bought them all City shirts, and they got a little tour of the ground. Well, not such a little tour, a big tour of the ground.
Yeah.
And they loved it. So the good thing about that was we were mirroring what they were into. So they felt comfortable about the environment, and they were really happy to be there. And then we'd signed it, or we'd done the provisional documents and signed it, and taken photographs on our cameras. And they'd flown in on their PJ, as you do.
Of course.
Into Manchester.
As we've done here today.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Into Cheshire countryside,
Into Cheshire countryside. So we leave the box, and we're all very happy and all that side of it. And as we walk out of the box to the main part of the ground, you look across Manchester, and it was a lovely evening in February. The sun was setting at about sort of 3:30, 4 o'clock. And you could see the wealth of Manchester, all the cranes, and sat across the city centre, and there was millions of buildings going up, and it just really showed the wealth of Manchester, and maybe what a good deal they'd got and a good deal we'd got. So we were all really comfortable what we decided.
So you used the best team in Manchester and the Manchester skyline to sell Sellick, is what I heard from that, Joe. What a great story. Thank you. Just taking a step back then, so the structure of that deal, the things that you're thinking about. So you, Ray and Hannah, are thinking about the price.
Yeah.
You're thinking about what they're going to do with the business afterwards. I heard you say there, what it means for the staff. So just talk us through what's that thought. What did you need to hear from them, from Gilles, to say, this is the deal for us?
Yeah, really good question. So I think primarily, number one in all our thinking was about the staff.
Okay.
So the earn out that we decided was quite a lengthy earn out. It was 5 years rather than 2 or 3. There were reasons for that. But predominantly, number one was if we're going to sell, what's the future for the offices and the staff? And we wanted, when we finally went to the employees, we really wanted to be business as usual.
Yeah.
So we didn't want too much change. We didn't want to be closing offices. We didn't want to be shifting the culture around or anything like that. So number one was the staff. I suppose number two was the price and what it was in it for us as equity holders, and then the business in general, what it was worth. And then thirdly, it was about the future, and what we wanted to do was grow the business and go on a journey with Gilles and Samsic and grow it. So I think I'll get my numbers right here. When in April 2017, when we sold the initial 70%, we were around about 45 million. When I came out 4.5, 5 years later, we'd got to 110.
Wow.
So the journey we went on with Samsic was a really good journey. It was positive. I had a great relationship with Gilles. Hannah and Ray had a great relationship with Gilles. They still do. They were great guys. And I think the nice thing about getting into bed with Samsic was that they were family owned. So their decisions weren't dominated by maybe the stock market or that side of it. And we had a really good bond with them. We felt trusted with them. And what they allowed us to do was grow the business. They wanted us to run it. They just wanted to be there to assist us and help us with the growth. And they stuck to their promise.
So their from our previous conversations, their ambition was to buy a UK-based recruitment business. It was the first venture into professional services. First venture into the UK.
Yeah, they wanted a UK footprint.
Okay, so and expand from there.
So they were. I think they were in Germany. They were in Italy. They were in other European countries. They'd seen obviously UK recruitment is a big industry, as we talked about right at the beginning. 43 billion. Back then it was probably 35 billion. But they wanted a UK footprint. They'd obviously met one or two other organisations in the process. And very quickly, from our first meeting, you could tell within sort of 15, 20 minutes of meeting Gilles and Tongi in London that there was some chemistry,
rapport there.
Rapport.
And going to the businesses that you rejected the offers from. Would any of those been, say, trade buyers? So again, for the benefit of the listeners, that a trade buyer would be another recruitment business, potentially UK, who's going to acquire you for your book or your expertise on the geography. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So they're buying us for the book, maybe the geography, maybe markets that they want to be in that they're not in. But we were really, really keen at the outset that, and one of the offers we turned down was a trade UK. One of them was from Ireland, but they would have definitely done stuff with the offices, and we just didn't want that. Okay. And again, the forefront of in our mind was our employees, and it was the right decision. We had really good longevity of our employees. We had people that had been with the business 10, 12, 15 years from 2003, 2004, and were still with us. So we owed them loyalty. And it turned out to be exactly the right decision. And there's still people that I know at Sellick 18, 19, 20 years down the line.
And Ray and Hannah are still
Ray and Hannah are still there. Yeah, they're still there. Building the business, I think, going from strength to strength. And I wish Gilles and Hannah and Ray and Sellick and Samsic all the best. You know, they're good people.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
In terms of the steps that you had to take to get the business ready for sale. So we've gone through the financial crisis.
Yeah.
You've rebuilt the business. Like you say, you've had to make some, as we all did at the time, some adjustments in your business model, costs and such like.
Yeah.
What do those blocks look like? When you sat down for the first time, the first round of negotiate or first round of interest, and then when you finally sat with Gilles, what did they look at and go, okay, the building blocks for this business are X, and therefore that's what I want to make an offer? Yeah.
So again, 2 or 3 years prior to, or 18 months prior to us actually going to market, so we're thinking about the senior management team, the relationships that maybe Ray and I and Hannah have. We want to pass those to the senior management team. We want to beef the senior management team up, because they're, with a sale, they're going to be the senior management team is so important to grow the business further down the line. Then you're looking at your contracts, you're looking at your systems, your IT. You're looking at the welfare of all the offices. You're looking at your compliance issues. You're really looking across the business to make sure that you're in really good shape. And what we did do at the time when we got into meetings and got into some due diligence. So due diligence is all about that your buyer looking at your accounts, making sure that the business that they're buying is in good shape. So we were very open and honest with Gilles and Samsic that we had one particular part of the business at the time wasn't doing as well as it should have been doing. So we were very open with them and said, the business is in really good shape. There's one tiny area that you might want to have a look at. So we showed them the accounts of the area. And they really welcomed that, because they welcomed the trust and loyalty that we were showing them. Because if we hadn't shown them, they'd have found it anyway. So, be open and honest, and it really worked for us.
So those sort of build. I'm thinking about the listeners and those people who are thinking, I want to prepare for a sale. What are the things to do? So you mentioned financing there. So yes. Presumably knowing your numbers.
Know your numbers really well. Know your numbers of your offices. If you've got multiple offices or you're working in different sectors, know your margin, know your profit. Know your top 15, 20 clients in those areas. You need to have some real detail, because you'll go into these meetings and you don't want to be caught out. You don't want to be embarrassed. You want to know your business through and through. So Ray and Hannah and myself and the senior management team, we do some prep, prior to these meetings, and you need to be on the money.
Okay. And then you mentioned, I think I heard you say succession planning. So the senior management team, that was presumably because you guys had this intention that the business would continue broadly as it is and grow, as opposed to, I guess, if it was a trade buyer, succession planning would be a bit less important, because potentially they would merge, they would have their own senior team that would run it. Yeah,
exactly. And Ray, Hannah and myself, we didn't want to leave the business. We wanted to stay there and grow it with them. So the senior management team was really important. We didn't want too much change post the deal. As mentioned a little bit earlier, we want business as usual, and that's generally how it turned out to be. We did some really, really good comms around the deal, and when actually the Monday morning when it got announced, we'd done some really good strategy around how those comms would be delivered, because we had 6 or 7 offices that we needed to tell.
Yep.
So we all got split out. The majority of people in Manchester. I think I might have gone to another location. But that was a real success for us, about getting our comms really right. Business as usual. The business wants to grow with you. There's not going to be any change. It's just bat on. And to me, the most important bit around that was the comms to the wider employees, that actually there wasn't going to be any change, and it was for the benefit of everyone.
Presumably that a positive response from the staff?
Positive response, absolutely, yeah. But I think the reason it was positive, because we'd thought about it. We didn't just blunder into it. We'd spent maybe a good 3, 4, 5 weeks when we knew the deal was going to happen. Okay, if we're going to sign something, we need to think about our employees, because the employees are your lifeblood of the company. And we were constantly thinking about, we don't want anyone to leave. We want it to be, I keep saying, we want it to be business as usual.
Fantastic.
And 3 or 4 weeks later, it was the same really. It was good. Bar maybe us going to France a little bit and having quarterly meetings with the French. It was really the same.
Croissants for breakfast and
There
stuff.
you go,
The thing. Yeah,
yeah.
there you go. And what about clients then? So you've done the deal.
Yep.
You've got that round your own head internally. You've spoken to all the employees. That it's gone down really well. What about clients? Where did that kind of fit into the mix, and what was their reaction?
Yeah, I think the client's reaction was congratulations. A lot of our clients were public sector, so we were keen through our comms to let everyone know what had happened. Again, there wasn't too much fuss around it really. We just continued doing what we were doing, but it just allowed us to maybe go into other markets. It gave us a confidence to maybe recruit more people, maybe better people. It was just that side of it. So we tried to really not dampen it down, but just go under the radar a little bit and just continue and do what we were good at, which was recruiting for organisations across the UK.
And the retention of the 30%, you sold 70% initially. And then you stayed on for 5 years when the last of the 30% went at that point. Was that driven by you or by them? Did they want you to stay on, or did you both? Was it a joint decision?
Yeah, massively. They wanted us to stay on.
Okay.
They didn't want to run the business. They knew a little bit about recruitment from their brands and offices in Europe, in other countries, but from the UK's perspective, they wanted us to run the business. They wanted us to just continue doing what we were doing, and to be fair to them, they allowed us to do that. Towards the end of my earn out and my shares, there were one or two decisions that and Gilles doesn't mind me talking about this. That he wanted to maybe go in a different route than I wanted to go in, which happens.
Yep.
And after 22 years, and I was in a bit of a limbo land. Was I going to stay? Was I going to go? So this is summer of 2023, where him and I were having some meetings around me and my role. If I wanted to leave, would I stay as a non-exec? Would I just sit on the board? Would I do part-time? And I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I think the other problem is that they didn't quite know what they wanted to do with me.
Okay. And
it was a bit stressful. And I got into a place where I ended up having some counselling and talking to someone because my head wasn't in a good space. It was the unknown that I didn't really, I didn't know where I was going. So I had some meetings with a counsellor, and it was a real positive thing for me because it outlined, or she outlined the feelings that I was going through was very normal. So she was a lady that had dealt with entrepreneurs quite a lot. And the thing about running your business, it becomes part of your life. And as you well know, and she nailed it within half an hour of me meeting her, that the problem you've got here, Joe, is that Sellick Partnership is your seventh baby. So in terms of actually, I might need to cut that. It's your fifth baby because I've got 4 kids. And she was absolutely right that it was part of my life. It was part of what I'd done for 22 years. It's a really long time. So it was very normal for me to have these thoughts and frustrations as to what I was or wasn't going to do. So she started to go through these, not role plays, but meetings where, start to visualize you maybe not being at the business, what you're going to do post-January if you do leave in January. And that was a really good exercise to go through. Are you going to, I'm not a golfer, but you're going to go and play golf. I'm a fisher, so I go fishing quite a lot. What are you going to do with your kids? Are you going to spend more time with them? Are you going to think about other businesses? Are you going to think about other opportunities? So she just gave me the license and the thoughts to actually think the space that I was in is very normal because, it can be a bit of a cliff edge that on a Friday you're involved in a big business, offices, people all over the place on a Friday, and then on the Monday you've sold it. What do I do? And there's lots. She'd met a load of people, and I've done a lot of reading around this. That on a Friday you do have a business, on the Monday you don't, and people don't think about it, and they fall off a cliff edge, and you can end up doing some bad stuff.
I mean, yeah, you and I have talked about this at length. my plan, having sold Worker, was to stay on for 12 months with an earn-out. So my earn-out was 12 months as opposed to yours was longer. And that was because we were on an upward trajectory, and our buyer felt like they wanted to buy the business, but the valuation we put on it didn't quite match theirs because we were exiting at a certain run rate, but we'd only done X. So what we said was, we're happy to stay on and show you in 12 months what this trajectory is the right trajectory, and therefore get the benefit of that in the earn-out, which is what we ended up doing.
And how was you in that process?
I was so focused on delivering the number. We far exceeded the number actually in terms of GP for that 12 months. I was so focused on that I wasn't thinking about anything else.
Foot on the pedal.
The previous time I sold a business with Pinnacle, I found working with somebody else very difficult. Having been making the decisions myself, and staying on literally as a sort of just to make sure the clients were okay and the staff were okay. I found that very difficult.
Changing the baton from you to them.
Absolutely, and the decisions you say towards the end of that 12 months at the end of Pinnacle, became more and more frustrating for me, and I knew I wanted out.
Similar to me towards the end of the earn-out, where just some decisions didn't get totally taken out of my control, but you could see my power, if you like, was leaving Manchester and going towards over the channel and towards France, which I guess is very natural as you get towards an earn-out and that scenario that I've painted. But my relationship with Samsic and Gilles was really amicable at the time, and it was just a natural parting of the waves. But you do, as a figurehead and as a leader and something you've grown from scratch, you become very attached to it, don't you? Naturally,
absolutely,
and it's hard.
I think second time round, I was a bit more aware of I'm going to lose control. I was okay with that. I'm going to leave after 12 months. I was so focused on it. But just almost to a word, Joe, you described how I thought my life was going to be. So I was going to learn to play golf. I was going to take the kids to school more often. I'm going to have a few more holidays. Potentially look at some other business interests because I'm a businessman.
Yeah, exactly. You want to work.
You want to work. In reality, there's a lot of hours left in the week when you've done those things compared to what you're used to doing, running a business, which is effective, as you say, 24/7. So that left a huge void in my life. The doing the 12 months, getting the second earn-out payment, which was far exceeded what we perhaps expected. We'd done so well in that 12 months, and then thinking, like you say, it's all gonna fall into place in there.
And it's challenging, isn't it, to think about what you're going to do with life, because you're relatively young. I'm relatively young. You have a lot of hours in the day to fill, and I think where a lot of people go wrong is they don't plan for that. So, some advice that if you are going to go through that process as a figurehead and a leader, and you're going to sell a business, think about what you want it to feel like or be like post the sale before you do sell. And Absolutely. It's worth some thought and worth some vision.
It really is, and I didn't do that. And I found myself in a position where I had some very low, some very dark days and weeks, really. And I think the sort of the example I always give is that you spend 20 years, 30 years with your phone just non-stop ringing. You're like, I wish the phone had stopped. Or somebody comes into your office, or you get an email, or you get a text message.
Or you're driving to a meeting, or you go in different parts of the country.
Absolutely. And
24/7, 100 miles an hour.
I wish the phone would just stop ringing just for 2 minutes so I catch my breath.
Yeah.
And then 6 months after you sell, it does stop ringing, and you're like, what is my life now that I haven't got to see? And that might sound a bit sort of a bit over the top, really, but
it's not
it
at
has
all.
been, as you say, when it's been like a child or it's been your passion for so long, your baby, then to switch that off and expect something else to fill that gap. I was so naive in that sense. And I say, I hope as we go through this series, talking to people like yourself who've had similar experiences, I hope that people watching it, who are on that treadmill, that hamster wheel, whatever you want to call it, a million miles an hour, I hope they take a step back and think, crikey, it's one thing getting to the end, but actually what's after the end? Because if I'm not doing it for the right reasons, I used to say I was doing it for my family, when in reality my family would have been perfectly happy when we've been at home more during that period and spending more time with them. So you get to the end having thought you've done it for your family and find that it's not quite what you expected.
And I think if you could reverse the clock, if you're able to, and I like you, I was 100% focused on the business, on when you get into the deal, doing the deal, and then post the deal, because you want to grow the business further, because you've still got 30% left, so you want to make that and grow that further and bigger and better. So again, you move into another phase of your life about trying to grow the 30% as better as you can. But then coming to the end of that, if I had my time again, I'd have definitely ran a two-way or two courses about growing the business and keeping focused. Also having a gentle mind on what am I going to do post leaving.
Yeah. I mean, a 5-year earnout, of course, gives you that opportunity, I suppose, doesn't it? But like you say, our first and foremost thought is I've got to do the 30%. I've got to go again. I've got to make sure. I don't know about you, but certainly in that earnout period, I felt like I'd kind of need to prove myself again.
Yeah,
you've got new
definitely.
owners.
You have a different challenge.
All of a sudden, you've got something to report to. You don't want your numbers to be, you don't want your numbers to be rubbish in the first board meeting, do you? So
100%. So it's different challenges, a different focus, very much so. So the money comes to your bank account. It sounds really weird. People ask me about this. Did you print off your bank statement and frame it or anything like that? I didn't at all. I just thought, great, I've got some, and it was money that was I guess life-changing. I'm very settled now from a financial perspective, which I'm very pleased about, and all that side of it. But your focus comes to your new employer and not wanting to embarrass yourself and the business who they've spent a lot of money buying. So you then go on a different journey and you get a different pressure. And
how did you feel when the money hit your bank account? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think.
Do you remember where you were? What were you doing?
I remember coming back from France prior to the deal at City, where it was pretty much over the line. The meeting at City, I think, was maybe a week later when we all got together. But so we came back from Paris, landed into Manchester, went to the Marriott and met one or two people in there and started to make phone calls saying, I think we've pretty much sold the business, friends, family, that side of it. But when the money did hit, it sounds really weird. I think I went for a meal, obviously celebrate it a little bit, but I didn't dine out over it. I just thought, it's the next stage of my life where I'm involved with the business for 5 years. I've got to focus on that.
A little bit anticlimactic.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. But buzzing the fact that we'd scaled and sold something from scratch, So there was definitely I was really trying to think of the right word. Yeah, I was buzzing that we'd sold it and we wanted to sell it. But very quickly, you then focus on other things because, I don't know, that was maybe on a Tuesday, then have the weekend, then you're right back into it the following Monday.
Yeah.
But, it was nice that, obviously the money's important.
So there was real pride in the achievement of having got there. Whereas,
really, exactly, yeah.
I guess I've always, since I've been 13, I've always worked and had enough money to do what I needed to do. So when money hit my bank account, I remember kind of thinking, that's great.
Yeah.
But it was more the pride of having achieved something. And particularly because the first time I thought, was it a fluke that sort of business first time? So I did the second one partly to prove to myself.
Good at your job, Matt.
Yeah.
Good at your job.
Some people might disagree with that, Joe. But anyway, so when that money hit the bank account, I remember thinking, that's great, but what's next type thing. But maybe that's because if you've always been in that kind of mindset of never really feeling too satisfied with where you've got to, then it potentially is a bit anticlimactic.
And I think the really important to say that you then have I have a new boss, and you hit the nail on the head a minute ago.
Yeah.
You don't want to embarrass yourself. You want to keep proving the numbers. You want to keep doing what you've signed up to do. And thankfully, through the earnout, we hit the numbers, and they were really pleased with us. In between that, we had COVID, which we had a fairly good COVID. We had some good tech. We managed to get through that okay. So it was all in all it was you're right, it was more pride to actually selling something that someone wanted.
Yeah. And did they invest during that period? So to go from sort of 43 to 100 plus million, did they put the money in to enable you to hit those numbers?
It was more about us having the confidence to go into different other markets, to get better people, to maybe pay better salaries, to grow it that way, and win more frameworks, all that side of it, more the infrastructure side of it. And it was confidence as well. It gave us some real confidence that we had a Samsic at the time were 4.2 billion.
Wow.
So they're a big business.
Yeah.
So it just allowed us to maybe, prior to them, we may have had a decision where we might have said no. We didn't often say no, but we might have said no. This allowed us to say, yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it worked well.
Just changing tack slightly, you mentioned you 4 children
Yes.
previously. How old are they?
So, Bella, I need to get this right, don't I?
You can always edit it out if you get any of them wrong. Yeah, we can dub your voice over it with a different age if you get it wrong.
Bella, 19, Lottie, 17, Ted, 13, and Mabel, 9.
Wow. Okay.
So right in the thick of it still.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so thinking about those closest to you,
Yeah.
what was your relationship like when you were in that period where you decided to sell? You were 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
What was your relationship like with those closest to you, your partner and your children?
Yeah, so building the business, I've taken sort of a little step back from that. So building the business, I often, twice a week, I probably wouldn't be there. I'd be in one of the other offices. But particularly Newcastle, I had to commute to Newcastle, so you'd stay overnight.
Great night out, Newcastle, isn't it? Yeah.
Good, yeah. Lots of fun in Newcastle. But I suppose I'm coming home. I'm not getting home till maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock most nights. Then I'm up, probably like you, 7:30. You're in the office for 8. So you're working really hard. Towards the deal, similar. You got the foot on the pedal. Post me coming out, so in the last 18 months, I've definitely spent a lot more time with the kids, doing the school run, walking the dog, all that side of being at home at sort of 4 o'clock rather than 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So that doing the deals allowed me to spend an awful lot more time with the kids, which I've really enjoyed. And my eldest Bella's gone to Nottingham University, so I'm still in the thick of it, but I'm enjoying more of their company and more of their time.
Yeah.
Which is lovely, and that's the positive of selling a business.
Yeah.
You get that's the benefit you get back.
I recall sort of, working in Manchester city centre. This is obviously before COVID, when flexible working, sort of became a thing, didn't it? Post COVID.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in Manchester when the kids were really little and thinking, if I don't go home now, I've left before they've got up.
Yeah.
And if I don't go home now, I'm going to miss bath time. That's I'm literally not going to see them today.
Yeah.
But I need to do this email, or I need to make this phone call and things like that. And I think,
did you do that email and did you do that call? Because I would have done that.
Invariably, if I'm really honest, work probably one more time. One's the wrong word, but I would have picked work over leaving a bit earlier to go home and see the kids. Which,
Me too.
What you end up doing sometimes, I think, Joe, then is I think you end up feeling like you're doing a shit job of both. Like you feel like I've got half an eye on that, I've got half an eye on that, and I guess when I'm working with people today, what I try to say to them, it's much easier said than done.
Through your mentoring?
Through mentoring, much easier said than done.
Yeah.
Is try and be focused on whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
So whether it's home, you just make sure you're laser focused on that, and then when it's work, it's work. Don't try and blur the two. I mean, stood in the garden, kicking a football, but really looking at your phone in your pocket was a regular. It'd be Saturday, and I'd be worried about what's going on. What's that text message mean? Versus actually, what's in front of me was my children playing football, and I wasn't always there.
It's a real talent to have to switch on and switch off. And I'd have been exactly the same as you. If I had a phone call to make or an email to respond to, I'd have probably done that. Another 20 minutes, then the commute home from Manchester, and then another 40, 50 minutes. So, but you know what? That's the benefits of running a business that we now have. The monies that I do have, I'm getting the upside now.
Knowing what you know now, would you have done anything differently? And again, this is, I guess, for the benefit of the people who are, perhaps 10 years behind us, but can see, perhaps listen to this and going, actually, I can hear what the guys are talking about. I'm doing that. I'm in that place. What would you potentially have done differently, if anything?
Yeah, I do some mentoring and do some advisory at the moment. And I think you've got to be really, if you're running a business and you don't want it to be lifestyle. I always wanted to have a brand. I didn't want it to be lifestyle. I wanted to have something which I could sell. And I think if you've got that mindset, you've got to totally immerse yourself in it. You can't play with it. Like you've done it twice. God knows what that's like, but I'm sure you get totally immersed in it, don't you? It just overwhelms you.
Yep.
And I think to me that's a positive. Why would you, if you're going to do something, you do it properly? What do I have any regrets? Yeah, maybe going into maybe a market which we didn't really do much analysis around. That was a mistake. I don't know. Maybe sometimes not having the foresight that we maybe should have had. Maybe from an employee perspective, maybe if someone, and we had occasional people that didn't work out, should that person stayed another 3 or 4 months than they maybe should have done, all the decisions around that. But as a board. And maybe the other thing, the numbers that I talked about, not looking at numbers in the early days enough and being led by the data. We got sidetracked by that once. But I think if your board and you as a senior management team are aligned and together, it becomes so much easier to grow a business, because you end up thinking the same, and then your decisions become a lot more easier because you're not fragmented. You're together. And
there was never any. Listen, you don't have to answer this question potentially. Never any conflict in terms of. Did everybody want to sell? Everyone would sell at the same time. Obviously, Ray and Hannah have stayed on.
Yeah,
so any conflict?
No. We listen. You'd have conflict in terms of making decisions over the years about turning left and turning right, and two might want to turn left and I want to turn right. And the way that I operate, I'd have probably gone with them.
Okay.
But sometimes someone has to make a decision. I was a major shareholder. If there was a tough decision to make, and they were maybe not opposing me, but were maybe, well, I don't agree with you, but I felt it was the right decision to make that tough decision. I'd make it. And it was quite rare that we'd be not aligned. And that was why working with Hannah and Ray was so good, because we thought the same, we acted the same, we wanted the best for the business, and it worked out really well.
Good, really good. So bringing us to today.
Yes.
Those feelings that you had 18 months ago of the purpose going and things like that, is what's life like now?
Yeah, so I've got a great life. I've got lots of variety. I'm involved in one startup which I'll maybe talk to you about in the future.
Yeah.
Which is all around feedback from a candidate perspective. I'm getting stuck into that, which is really enjoyable. I'm spending more time with the kids. I'm playing some paddle. I'm going fishing. I'm walking the dog. I've lost a bit of weight. I'm enjoying life. It's the variety, which I'm really enjoying, and not missing that commute into Manchester every day. And maybe rather than getting up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'm getting up at 7:30. So, there's some real benefits to it. But I wouldn't have missed my journey. I had so much fun. The culture of the business was great. It's a fantastic industry to be involved in, and I wouldn't have changed anything, both ups and downs. Because the scars that you get from the downs, you learn from. And I don't know anyone that's run a business that hasn't any scars.
Well, yeah, I guess you learn the most, don't you, from the things that go the most wrong, in my experience, anyway. And you do some mentoring yourself now. Are you working with some businesses and imparting your experience with them?
Yeah, exactly. So which I'm only 55. I've still got loads of gas in the tank. I want to help businesses. I'm keen to and they're probably going to be smaller businesses that I can help grow and rather move from a lifestyle into maybe something that's tangible that they can maybe sell in the future. But it's talking to them about the pitfalls that I've been through, and the mistakes that I've been made, which I've made, which they can avoid, and I want to give something back. And I'm really enjoying that, as I know you are. You're doing some of that, aren't you? And I think it's really rewarding.
Yeah, it is. I think that what I found in the early, probably the first 18 months is, you used the phrase earlier about sort of not playing about with it.
Yeah.
So I was doing a little bit. I wasn't even asked to get paid. I was just sort of doing it on it because I like the people.
You're a nice bloke.
Yeah, and like the people, and I feel like I made some money, so I should be maybe giving something back.
Yeah.
In reality, what happens if you don't get paid is you end up a bit frustrated on both sides, because they're kind of looking at you to do stuff and you're thinking, well, I'm doing it for free, so you can hang on a few days, type thing, and they're looking at me going, well, I'm expecting you to do that sort of thing. So
totally right.
My advice post a transaction, if you're going to get back into business, is to make it the parameters and the what you're responsible for, what the expectations are, make it absolutely crystal clear, like any other walk of business, but make it absolutely crystal clear what the expectation is, and then people won't get frustrated on both sides.
Couldn't agree more.
I've found that because
your knowledge is valuable, and your experience is valuable.
I'd like to think so, I guess. Yeah, I mean, scaling a business, as you know, I'm really pleased that you talked about those building blocks. I think that's really useful for the listeners to hear that, knowing your numbers. I think you use that as number one. I use it as number one as well.
Yeah.
People have to, understand your people. It's very different recruiting in today's market for your own staff than it was even 5 years ago, with expectations. I think
it was the biggest challenge that we had was trying to find people.
Really?
Number one, biggest challenge, finding people for the company. And it's a paradox that we're a recruitment business, and we're struggling to hire people for the business. It was mental, but it was the biggest challenge.
And why do you think that was? It'd been the same throughout the sort of 20 years?
Same throughout that whole time. Number one, biggest challenge, finding the right people. And we'd go down many tacks. We'd go down experience tack. We'd go down second jobbers tack, university route, all sorts. People that maybe didn't have a degree, they didn't have to have a degree. We'd look at anyone and everyone, a bit older, a bit younger, apprenticeships, all sorts. And it's so difficult.
Did any particular sort of group end up working out better than others? Was there something that you settled on that was the right formula?
Yeah, I suppose if I could generalise, maybe second jobbers that didn't have a silver spoon, that might have worked in McDonald's or had a paper round, that had to get up, had maybe got a mortgage, that maybe got some kids. They needed to earn money. So, but I'm generalising a little bit. It was really hard. No real group or sector. What we try to do is give people opportunities, and sometimes those opportunities didn't work out for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was talking the other day to somebody about recruiting this sort of modern job market, and I feel that businesses are having to really sell themselves to individuals, which can stick in the throat a little bit sometimes. I find if you're like me from a time when you were just delighted to get a job offer, and you would never have dreamt of asking what the flexible working policy was. But I fully understand now that a business and the clients that I work with, it's really important that they're showing the individual what's in it for them, how their personal objectives and goals can be aligned with working for that business.
Give them a vision.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's really key. And I think some employers are still in that mindset of you'd be lucky to work here, and actually I think that's hitting a bit of a bum note.
But I think on the flip side of that, if after 2 questions someone's asked you about the working from home policy, that was maybe a bit of a no for us.
Yeah, potentially, but we're perhaps a bit old school.
So
what's next for you then? So you're doing the work, you've settled back into a life. No ambitions to go back and run a huge business again?
Yeah, I don't know. I've got another 6 months of my restrictions to conclude. Would I go back into another business or build another business like Sellick, multiple offices in this current landscape? Probably not. I think with the geopolitical stuff that's going on at the moment, I think the world's it's a difficult place, and running a business these days is hard. There's challenges across the board. So, and I think as I said earlier, the recruitment industry in the UK is worth 43 billion. It will always be there. I think that maybe the tide for contingency, natural recruitment is maybe going out a little bit. I think if you're a business which is niche, go narrow and go deep. There'll always be businesses that will survive that way. I think maybe the days of multiple offices across the UK or across wherever you're selling into, that may be changing.
Okay.
Just because there's so many, the flexibility now that you have through technology and hiring offices, you can run businesses that way rather than having a location in a city.
I listened to a talk from a very passionate chap who said exactly the same as you in terms of being an absolute expert in your field. So he saw the market going sort of polar opposites. So at one end of the scale, you've got lower margin, higher volume, driven by technologies, some very good architects sort of pushing the right buttons and all that sort of stuff and driving that side of things. And at the other end, you've got the real experts who are market leaders in their field, higher margins, lower volume, clearly. The reason he was doing the talk was he said anybody who sits in the middle who's not quite expert enough to win this business and isn't quite slick enough or cheap enough, for want of a better word, at this end is going to find they're going to get their businesses
rock in a hard place.
Eaten from both sides. So do you see technology a big part of what Sellick did?
Yeah, we embraced technology as you had to towards the end. At the beginning, it was a real weakness of ours. We didn't really embrace it as quickly as we should have done. But as we before COVID, and I think working from home was going that way, as we've talked about. I think it just speeded it all up. When we all went home, I think it was 16th of March, whenever it was, when Johnson said, "Go home, everyone." I think it's fast forwarded it maybe by 5 years. And listen, did I enjoy working from home? Not really. I was really keen to get people back into the offices. Because that's where you learn. You learn from people. You don't learn over Zoom.
Yeah, I always talk about the osmosis effect of, you know, being in an office and, you know, hearing Jo Sellick on the phone to a client. You just don't get that. You don't get that experience from sitting at home, unfortunately. Whilst I can completely, you mentioned the commute, I can understand why people want a certain amount of time at home to do their administration, to do the stuff they can just sit in front of the computer and do, or make their phone calls potentially. Yeah, but that learning process, I do worry about a generation of people who've never really experienced a full office environment and what their learnings may be in future. But listen, it's still relatively early days, and I'm sure it'll work itself out.
I think the other thing is, maybe just to conclude on that part, is that also from the social side of it, you know, why would you want to stay at home when at 5 o'clock, if you want to go for a drink or you want to play some sport or, you know, spend some time with your colleagues out of work? I had the best time, you know, outside the working hours, doing stuff with my colleagues, whether it was sport or in the pub or doing whatever we're doing. It's fun. Why would you want to be at home?
Yeah. Getting people to come for a drink these days is quite tough, isn't it?
Yeah,
young people
even
anyway,
if you're buying as well.
But I think that's got to be positive in some ways, hasn't it, Joe? Yeah, fantastic. Joe, that was fantastic. We could sit here and talk all day, I'm sure, but that was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us
really enjoyed
this morning, and good luck in future.
You're a good man, Matt. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.